Woodshop. The woodshop is an area where it is not uncommon for several students to be working at the same time. For this reason, when working in the woodshop, it is imperative to always follow shop procedures and safety operation practices. Also, see general formula for working safely. One must complete the woodshop safety training before access to the area is granted. Those not enrolled in Art 231 must sign up for safety training. See the shop technician for safety training dates. Number 1. General procedures. Safety glasses and hearing protection are required while inside the woodshop, even if you are not working. Keep a dust mask handy. Keep all doors closed while working to limit dust tracking into other rooms. Store all lumber in racks located near the miter saw. Sheet goods are to be stored upright, and dimensional lumber, i.e. 2x4s, should be stored on shelf racks. Keep materials organized and secured to keep heavy materials from falling on someone. All lumber must be labeled with name, course number, and semester. Any unlabeled lumber will be treated as donation. Put all usable scraps in the scrap bin. Remove any nails or screws before placing material in the scrap bin. Put down plastic, paper, or a scrap piece of material when gluing up a project. Keep glue nozzles closed and clean by wiping with a damp cloth or paper towel after use. Do not overextend any coiled cords or hoses. Use the cord or hose that is closest to the area where you are working. Sawdust is okay to sweep into the floor dust collection ports, but do not sweep any nails, screws, metal, plastic, paper, or other garbage into any dust collection port. Number 2, hand tools. Screwdrivers. Make sure the screwdriver does not have a cracked or broken handle, bent shank, and that the tip is not damaged or worn. Don't hold the workpiece in your hand when using a screwdriver. Doing so is asking for a puncture wound. Match your screwdriver to the correct size and shape of the screw head slot. Never hammer or use a screwdriver as a pry bar, punch, or scraper. Do not apply pliers or wrench to a round shank screwdriver. Hammers. Use the proper hammer for the job. Heavier jobs require heavier heads. Claw hammers are for wood construction. Ball peen hammers are for metalwork and striking other tools. Never use a hammer with broken, cracked, or splintered handles, a loose head, or a damaged striking face. Never strike two hammer faces together. Wrenches. Always pull on a wrench. Pushing on a wrench will likely result in smashed fingers. Use a wrench that fully encloses the nut or bolt head, like socket wrench, box wrench, etc. Make sure the wrench you are using has a proper fit for your application. Hex key wrenches, or Allen wrench, should be checked for rounded corners. Never add a length of pipe or other device to a wrench to increase leverage. Do not pound or hammer on a wrench unless the wrench was specifically designed for this. Punches, chisels, and hand planes. Keep cutting edges sharp. Do not use dull punches, chisels, or planes. Make sure the material you are working with is properly secured or clamped. Never punch, chisel, or plane towards yourself or another. Pliers. Always wear safety glasses. Flying particles from nail heads or pieces of wire are potential hazards. There are many different types of pliers. Use the appropriate tool for the job. Ask when unsure. Use an appropriate size tin snips for the thickness of the stock being cut. Keep tin snips sharp. Do not use pliers to tighten nuts or bolts. Use a wrench. Hand saws. Select the appropriate saw for the job, i.e. hacksaw for plastic and metal, coarse tooth for wood. Avoid using saws with dull or bent blades, loose or damaged handles. Check material being cut for nails, nuts, and other objects that may damage or buckle the saw. Hold material being cut firmly in place or use a vise to support stock. Start the cut by placing your hand beside the cut mark with your thumb upright and pressing against the blade. Start the cut carefully and slowly to prevent the blade from jumping. Pull upward until the blade bites. Start with a partial cut, then set the saw at an angle. Apply pressure on downstroke only. Keep teeth and blades properly set during a cut. Use steady strokes directed away from you. Number 3, power tools, drills, and impact driver. Be sure that the drill or driver bit is firmly placed in the chuck. Gripping the handle of the drill with one hand, use the other to firmly turn the chuck to the right to lock it down on the bit. To remove, turn the chuck to the left. Maintain a firm grip on the drill at all times. Whenever possible, use both hands for drilling operations. The workpiece should be clamped on or anchored to a sturdy base. Be sure not to drill towards any part of your body. If the drill slips, it may cause severe harm. Circular saw. Check the guard to be sure it operates freely and encloses teeth completely. Do not use a circular saw that is too heavy for you to easily control. Hold the saw firmly with both hands. Always securely clamp the workpiece. Be sure the trigger switch works properly. It should turn the tool on and return to the off position when pressure is released. Make sure to use the correct blade for the job. Use sharp blades. Dull blades cause binding or kickback. Check the blade carefully before each use for proper alignment and possible defects. Before starting the circular saw, be sure the power cord and any extension cords are out of the blade path and are long enough to complete the cut. Never hold a workpiece in your hand or across your leg. Never reach under a saw or workpiece during a cut. Circular saws are not designed for cutting logs, roots, or trees. Avoid cutting small pieces of material that cannot be properly secured or material on which the saw shoe cannot properly rest. Set blade depth to no more than 1/4 of an inch greater than the thickness of the material being cut. Be careful to not cut into the workbench. Use scrap board or foam underneath the workpiece. Allow the blade to reach full speed before the workpiece is contacted. At the beginning and end of a cut, or when the teeth are exposed, the operator must take extra care to keep the body extremities and the power cord away from the cutting line. When hanging material off the side of the workbench, make sure the cutoff is properly supported. When making a partial cut, or if power is interrupted, release the trigger immediately and wait until the blade has come to a complete stop to remove it. After a cut is complete, switch the tool off. Don't remove the saw from the workpiece until the blade has come to a complete stop. Reciprocating saws. Position yourself to maintain full control of the tool. Avoid cutting above shoulder height. Use the correct blade for the operation being performed. Ask if you are unsure. To minimize blade flexing, use the shortest blade that will do the job. The workpiece must be clamped securely and the shoe of the saw held firmly against the work to prevent vibration that can lead to the blade breaking and possible injury. Turn off the tool when the job is completed and do not remove the saw from the material until the blade has fully stopped. Remove the blade when the tool is to be stored. Palm, belt, and orbital sanders. Maintain a firm grip on the sander at all times. Sanders can cause serious skin abrasions when the rapidly moving abrasive touches the body. Use the downdraft table or portable dust collector to limit dust from the work area. Wear a dust mask. Clamp your piece whenever possible. When adjusting the tracking of the belt sander, support the sander and position it to avoid accidental contact with yourself or adjacent objects. Router. Always unplug the router before changing a bit or making adjustments. Make sure the bit you are using is not dull or damaged. Make sure the bit is properly secured in the router collet. Always have at least 3/4 of the shank secured in the collet. Use the proper shank width. For example, 1/4 inch shank with 1/4 inch collet and 1/2 inch shank with a 1/2 inch collet. Only use router bits. Do not use burrs, drill bits, or grinders in the router. Always make sure the workpiece is clamped securely. Always use 2 hands on the router. Never use a free hand to hold down a workpiece. Make sure the cord is not in the path of your cut. Never start the router with the bit touching your piece. Move the router against the direction the bit is spinning or counterclockwise. Never force the router. Make multiple passes for deeper cuts. Allow bit to stop fully before setting down your router. Always remove the router bit before putting it away. Pneumatic nail, pin, and staple guns. Never operate pneumatic tools above the recommended pressure, or PSI. Always assume the tool contains fasteners. Never point the tool at yourself or others. Do not carry the tool with your finger on or under the trigger. Be aware of your surroundings and make certain no one is on the opposite side of the wall or board you are going to nail. Avoid hard to penetrate material like wood knots and any non-wood surfaces. Do not drive fasteners on top of other fasteners or with the tool at too steep an angle. Fasteners can ricochet and cause injury. Keep your hands or any other parts of your body at least 8 inches from the point where the gun is contacting the workpiece. Choose the appropriate fastener length and type. Disconnect the tool from the air hose before changing fasteners, making adjustments, clearing jammed fasteners, moving the tool to another location, or handing the tool to another person. Never use the tool if the safety element, trigger, or springs have become inoperable, missing, or damaged. Do not tamper with or remove the safety element, trigger, or springs. Use only clean, dry regulated compressed air at the recommended pressure. If unsure, ask. Pneumatic chippers, drills, and hammers. Make sure all attachments are securely fastened to the tool. Be sure the tool is securely fastened to the air line. Always securely clamp your workpiece. Never chisel, chip, or drill towards your body. Compressed air tools should never be pointed towards anyone. Air hoses and fittings. Do not attempt to remove collets from air hoses while pressurized. Air hoses should be kept free of grease and oil to reduce the possibility of deterioration. Hoses should not lay on the floor. They are liable to cause a tripping hazard. Hose ends must be coiled when not in use to prevent whipping if an accidental cut or break occurs. Avoid using compressed air to clean dirt or dust off your clothing or skin. Never blow air near ears, eyes, or any other part of your face. Number 5. Stationary tools. Miter saw. Keep the saw and work area clean. Clutter invites accidents. Allow the motor to reach full speed before cutting. Never start with blade touching the material. Keep one hand on the trigger switch and handle and use the other hand to hold the stock securely against the fence. Keep hands out of the path of the blade. Do not stand directly in front of the blade, stand to the side. Make sure the saw is securely tightened when making any miter or bevel adjustments. Never cut freehand. The stock should lie solidly on the table against the fence. Avoid using bowed, warped, or twisted material. When cutting short stock, use a clamp to securely fasten the workpiece against the fence. Stock smaller than 12 inches should be cut with a different tool. Do not reach around, behind, or near the saw blade when in use. Do not take your hand away from the trigger switch and handle until the blade is fully covered by the lower blade guard. Do not force the saw. The saw cuts better and more safely at the rate for which it is designed. Always clean the saw and work area upon completion of your task. Do not use your hands to clean the dust or shavings. Use the bench brush. Bandsaw. Ensure blade guards are about 1/8 of an inch from the top of the stock. Anything over 1/8 of an inch not only reduces the accuracy of the cut, but will lead to an accident because of more saw blade exposed. Keep the bandsaw area clean. Tools, wires, scrap wood, garbage, or anything on the floor around the bandsaw will lead to an accident. Make sure the stock stays firmly pressed against the table. You should never hold the stock up and try to cut it. Cutting material in the air will likely cause your hand to slip and jam into the saw. Avoid using round stock without a miter gauge or V-sled. Keep your hands in safe positions. Neither of your hands should ever be in the path of the saw blade. Keep your hands approximately 3 inches away from the saw blade or cutting path at all times. If the stock slips forward because the blade cuts faster than expected, your hand won't be jammed into the blade. When cutting small material, use a push stick. Never leave the bandsaw on. When finished, shut it off. Never leave a bandsaw unattended when it is turned on. Always clean the bandsaw and work area upon completion of your task. Do not use your hands to clean the dust or shavings. Use a bench brush. Drill press. Make all drill press adjustments with the power shut off. Make sure the size of the bit is equal to or less than the capacity of the drill press. Do not exceed the recommended speeds for the type and size of drill bit being used or composition of the stock being drilled. Insert bit into drill chuck and tighten with the chuck key. Remove chuck key from the drill chuck before starting the drill press. Watch for a wobbly spin. This indicates the bit has been inserted incorrectly. Use a clamp or vise to securely fasten the stock to the drill press table. Never attempt to hand-hold stock while drilling. Long stock should be drilled with the excess to the left of the operator. If the stock rotates it, it will hit the post and not the operator. Support the underside of the stock to be drilled with a backer board secured to the drill press table. Never leave tools or other scraps on the table while using the drill press. Keep hands and fingers at least 3 inches from rotating drill bits. Drill into cylindrical stock using a V-block. When drilling deep holes, cut in steps. Frequently raise the drill bit from the hole to remove cuttings and cool the bit. If a drill bit binds, turn off the drill press and carefully turn drill chuck backwards by hand to free the drill bit. Never reach around or under a rotating drill bit. Never attempt to stop the rotation of the drill press chuck, spindle, or stock rotating on the bit with your hands or fingers. Do not touch the drill bit and shavings. they are hot immediately after drilling. Always clean the drill press and work area upon completion of the task. Do not use your hands to clean the dust or shavings. Use a bench brush. Belt, disc, and oscillating spindle sanders. A 2-foot perimeter around the sanders should be kept clear of people, debris, and sawdust that impair traction or footing to avoid slips and falls. Inspect sanding belts or discs before using them. Ask sculpture faculty or the shop technician to replace belts or discs that are worn or frayed. Disconnect power supply before making adjustments. Keep your hands and other body parts away from any sanding surface. Keep all cords clear of the sanding area during use. Do not exert excessive pressure on your workpiece against the sander. Only light pressure is adequate for most jobs. Always be mindful of the direction the sanding belt or disc is moving so it does not unexpectedly grab the workpiece out of your hands. On the disc sander, work on the left side of the table where the disc is traveling downwards. Move your workpiece laterally along the entire usable surface. Focusing your sanding in one spot for extended durations will build up excessive heat that will ruin the abrasive surface. Always clean the sanders with the rubber cleaning stick upon completion of the sanding task. Do not use your hands to clean dusts or shavings. Use a bench brush. Jointer. Use paddles, push blocks, and push sticks to keep your hands at least 6 inches away from the cutter head at all times. Never joint stock less than 12 inches long. Check the depth of the cut before turning the machine on. Adjust depth of cut to less than 1 32 inches for material with knots, 1/16 for clear material. Never edge joint material less than 1/4 of an inch thick, 3/4 of an inch wide, or 12 inches long. Never face joint material less than 3/8 of an inch thick, 3/4 of an inch wide, or 12 inches long. Never remove or alter the blade guard. Stand to one side of the jointer, not directly behind it. Allow the cutter head to reach full speed before starting a cut. Never feed the material with your thumb or fingers on the end of it. Keep them on top of the material. Always clean the jointer and work area upon completion of task. Do not use your hands to clean the dust or shavings. Use a bench brush. Thickness planer. Never put your hand between the cutter head and table, regardless of whether the machine is running or not. The blades are extremely sharp. Never plane a board less than 8 inches in length. It may become jammed in the machine or result in kickback. Place the board you wish to plane on the thickness planer table and lower the cutting head until it just touches the surface of the board. Remove the board and lower the head another 1 32 inches. Feed the board into the machine. It will automatically travel through. Feed work into the machine against the direction of the rotation of the cutter head only. Follow with gradually deeper passes until 1 32 inches each time until the desired thickness is obtained. Be sure to support the board as it exits the thickness planer to avoid snipe or deeper cut at the end of the pass. Never leave the machine running unattended. Turn power off. Always clean the planer and work area upon completion of the task. Do not use your hands to clean the dust or shavings. Use a bench brush. Router table. Unplug router when changing the bit. At least 2/3 of the bit's shank should be engaged in the router collet to keep the bit from coming loose during operation. Cover the bit with the guard whenever possible. Use feather boards and push sticks to keep the fingers away from the bit. Move pieces from right to left against the fence. Never make a freehand cut. Do not force the cut. Make multiple passes for deeper cuts. Move pieces counterclockwise around a bit with a bearing cutting guide. Never position the fence so that the piece is pushed between it and the bit. Always clean the router table and work area upon completion of the task. Do not use your hands to clean the dust or shavings. Use a bench brush. Number 6. Table saw. Kickback is a sudden reaction to a pinched blade, causing a combination of the saw being lifted up and out of the workpiece toward the operator and or the workpiece being propelled in the direction of the blade rotations. There are specific precautions that can be observed to prevent kickback of the saw. Only dry, flat wood should be cut. Be cautious of stock that is wet, knotty, or warped. Make sure the cutting path is clear of any tools or debris. Keep saw blades sharp. Notify the shop technician if the blade is dull, bent, or damaged. Keep saw blades clean. Buildup of pitch or sap increases the friction on the blade surface. Release the switch immediately if the blade binds or the saw stalls. Support large panels with rollers. Never make a freehand cut. All cuts must be supported by the rip fence. Never cross-cut long stock on a table saw. It is difficult to support and control and may result in kickback. Instead, use a miter saw. Saw stop considerations. The saw stop table saw has a special safety feature to prevent the loss of body parts due to table saw accidents. The blade carries a small electrical signal that can detect any conductive material such as human skin. When a conductive material activates the saw stop, an aluminum brake springs into the blade, stopping it almost instantaneously, drives the blade beneath the table, and shuts off the motor. Every time the saw stop is triggered, the brake cartridge and blade need to be replaced. Use the following considerations to prevent unnecessarily triggering the saw stop. Do not cut wood that is wet or pressure treated. Do not cut acrylic or aluminum without bypass mode activated, which must be approved first. Check that material does not have staples, nails, screws, or other metal hardware. Use extra caution when using pallet wood, reclaimed lumber, or recycled materials. The saw stop does not prevent kickback. Always use safe operation recommendations. Table saw operation. Ensure that blade guard, riving knife, and anti-kickback devices are in place and operating properly. Set the blade depth to 1/8 to 1/4 of an inch higher than the thickness of your material. Ensure that the rip fence is parallel to the blade and locked down before cut. Check the throat plate to ensure that it sits correctly. Never operate a table saw with the throat plate removed. Stand to the left of the blade. This reduces the chance of being struck if kickback occurs. Make sure that no one is working behind you. Kickback could injure those around you. Do not overreach or stretch to get something when using the saw. Keep proper footing and balance at all times. Use your left hand to guide the material against the fence while your right hand pushes material through the blade. Always maintain firm control over the material being cut. Use your fingertips to handle material. Do not handle material using your entire hand flat on the surface. This may increase the chance of your hand slipping. Never force the cut. Allow the blade to do the work, cutting at a steady pace. Complete your cut, then turn off the saw. Do not release your hand from the material until it has completely cleared the blade. Use a push stick for any cut smaller than 6 inches. When ripping a piece smaller than 2 inches, consider using a larger piece and keeping the offcut. Never leave a running saw unattended. Always clean the table saw and work area upon completion of the task. Do not use your hands to clean the dust or shavings. Use a bench brush. Jigs and specialty setups. The table saw is a versatile tool. Certain cuts require a jig or a special setup. Before attempting a special type of cut, be sure that you are comfortable and knowledgeable with the table saw operation and procedures. Ask the shop technician for assistance before making any adjustments, blade changes, or using any jigs.